Graduation parties are supposed to feel like the closing of a perfect chapter, a night of applause and pride, where every sacrifice feels worth it. That's what I pictured mine to be, with the sparkling chandeliers, the scent of fresh flowers in the banquet hall, and my family cheering me on. After all, I had worked for years to earn this degree, sacrificing sleep, comfort, and countless weekends to make it to this very night. I stood in the middle of the room, my graduation gown still stiff and new, the cap threatening to slip from my hair. People I loved circled around me, clapping, hugging me, taking pictures, telling me how proud they were. I should have felt like the hero of my own story. Instead, I felt this strange, creeping chill the moment my husband stepped toward me with a thin, sharp-edged smile that made my stomach twist. We had been together since I was a teenager, and for years he had carried the power in our relationship. He was older, already successful, already sure of who he was. I clung to him in the beginning, grateful for the way he made me feel safe, convinced he was my anchor and my protector. But slowly, that safety had turned into a cage I could barely breathe inside. I sensed the danger before he even opened his mouth. It was in the coldness of his eyes, in the hard grip of his hand on my shoulder as he leaned down to whisper in my ear. "You'll never survive without me," he said, slowly enough for me to feel every syllable scrape against my heart like shards of glass. He had the audacity to say that in front of my entire family, at the biggest moment of my life, as if he owned me, as if every achievement was really his. I felt my heart plummet through my chest, heat rising to my face. It was so public, so humiliating, yet nobody else seemed to notice. They were still laughing, still toasting, still celebrating me. In those seconds, I think something inside me finally snapped and refused to bend again. I had given him so much power over me for so long. I had believed, deep down, that he was right, that I could never stand on my own 2 feet. That I was too fragile, too dependent, too lost without him to make it alone. But in that moment, with my diploma clutched in one sweaty hand, I realized I had survived every challenge to get here. I had survived exams, papers, internships, long commutes, exhaustion, panic attacks. I had survived all of it, and I had done it alone, on my own merit and resilience. So why couldn't I survive without him? That night, I forced a polite smile, posed for the photographs, and tried to bury the shaking in my hands. But deep down, I made a silent promise to myself, this would be the last night he would ever get to take away my pride or steal my joy. I would build something so strong, so unbreakable, that his words would never reach me again, no matter how cruel they became. The party carried on, and I let the lights blur, let the noise wash over me, covering my secret plans. My friends danced, a cake was cut, people toasted my success, but inside, I was already plotting a new life. One that belonged to me, and only to me. If you've ever been told you're worthless, if you've ever had someone look you in the eyes and say you couldn't survive, I want you to keep listening. My story might remind you that no one has the right to break you down or crush your dreams. And if you feel that spark inside, the same spark I felt that night, hold on to it tightly. It can change your entire life. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe if you believe no one should be made to feel small, because what I'm about to share goes far beyond a graduation party. It's about finding the courage to take back your life, even when the people closest to you try to tear it apart. It's about standing up, even with trembling knees, and refusing to let someone else own your story or rewrite your worth. That night, as the DJ played a cheesy song and guests cheered for my bright future, I slipped away to the bathroom and locked the door behind me. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, seeing a woman who looked proud but felt shattered. I took a long breath, steadying myself, willing my legs to stay strong. "You'll never survive without me," echoed again in my mind, over and over, like a curse meant to bind me. But curses only have power if you believe in them. I straightened my shoulders and said to the mirror, as softly as a prayer, "Watch me." That was the first time I truly believed I could be free, and no one could ever take that away. The morning after my graduation party, the house felt like a stage after the curtain had closed. Streamers still clung to chairs, half-empty bottles lined the counter, and cake crumbs sat on forgotten plates. The celebration was over, but the echo of his words was still loud in my ears. "You'll never survive without me." Those 6 words slammed against my heart every time I took a breath. It should have been the happiest night of my life, but he had poisoned it, just like he had done with so many of my moments. I sat at the edge of my bed that morning, still in my wrinkled dress, staring at nothing. I could feel the familiar pit in my stomach, the same fear that had paralyzed me for years. What if he was right? What if I couldn't survive alone? Then, something unexpected happened. As I looked down at my diploma, half buried under a pile of discarded gift wrap, a different voice answered. "You made it this far alone. You can do the rest." It was quiet, but so clear that I couldn't ignore it. That was the moment I decided to fight. I took a shower, let the cold water wake me up, and made the first phone call that would change everything. It was to my friend Nora, who worked at a small law firm downtown. I'd helped her edit resumes before, and I remembered she once mentioned they needed a temporary assistant. It wasn't glamorous, but I needed a start, any start. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "do you think they're still hiring?" Nora sounded surprised. "Are you serious? You want to work there?" I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Yes. I'm serious." By that afternoon, I was sitting in a cramped office, filling out paperwork and learning how to answer the phones. My husband didn't even notice I was gone. He had slept through the day, a bottle of whiskey still on the nightstand. The law firm was chaotic, underfunded, and overstressed, but it was a lifeline. Every time I picked up the phone, every email I sent, I felt like I was stitching myself back together. I was earning something with my own hands, no matter how small. That first paycheck was tiny, barely enough for groceries, but when I held it, I cried. It had my name on it, no one else's. For the first time in years, I felt my own power. Of course, he mocked me the moment I told him. "An assistant? That's pathetic." But I didn't answer. Silence, I was learning, could be sharper than any retort. Every night, I stayed late, learning to file motions, organize discovery binders, and even take notes during client meetings. The lawyers were rough, but fair, and after a while they began to trust me with real responsibilities. At home, the tension was growing. He felt me slipping away, and he hated it. I could see it in the way he glared when I came home after sunset, in the sarcastic questions about playing lawyer. But he couldn't stop me anymore. I was changing. The routine was exhausting, but I welcomed it. For the first time, my mind was too busy to spiral into self-doubt. I was too focused on getting better, faster, sharper. One night, as I was closing the office, one of the senior partners walked over. "You've got grit," he said. "People like you usually go far." That simple sentence felt like oxygen. Someone had seen me. Someone believed I could go far. As the weeks passed, I saved every dollar I could. I opened my own account, hidden from my husband, and made a rule: that money was for me alone, for the future I was building. And each time I added even a few dollars, I felt lighter. Stronger. Still, the fear crept back at night. He was there, reminding me with every glance, every insult, that he thought I was nothing. But something inside me was shifting. I could hear that small, steady voice from graduation night: "Watch me." That was my anchor. If you've ever felt like there's no way out, I want you to remember this: you don't have to take huge leaps right away. Small steps can change everything. That law firm desk, that battered phone, even those late nights where I cried in the bathroom, they were my steps. They were my freedom. And if my story is speaking to you right now, remember to like, share, and subscribe, because you never know who might need a reminder that they are worth fighting for. Because what comes next in my story proved that those small steps were just the beginning, and the best revenge is rising beyond what anyone thinks you're capable of. 3 months passed like a blur of late nights and early mornings. My days were crammed with work, my evenings spent studying contracts, and my weekends buried in legal textbooks I borrowed from the office. I could feel my old life cracking apart, piece by piece, as my confidence grew. I had moved up from an assistant to a junior case manager. My pay had nearly doubled, and the partners were starting to rely on me for client interactions. I was terrified half the time, but that fear had transformed into something powerful, a drive I'd never known before. At home, the tension was a living, breathing thing. My husband noticed my changing schedule, the new clothes I bought with my own money, the way I walked taller and refused to shrink in his presence. He hated it. The man who once seemed so powerful suddenly looked small, clinging to his sense of superiority as if it could keep me from growing. One evening, he waited for me at the kitchen table, arms crossed, eyes cold. "So you think you're better than me now?" he asked, sneering. I placed my keys on the counter and looked him straight in the eyes. "No," I answered calmly. "I just think I'm finally better than what you wanted me to be." That set him off. He called me selfish, ungrateful, even delusional. But I refused to be dragged down again. I'd heard those words so many times they had lost their bite. Instead, I focused on my next goal, qualifying to become a certified legal consultant. It would take months of extra study, and the application fees were painful to afford, but I told myself it was worth every penny. In the office, people began to notice my hustle. Clients requested me by name. Lawyers trusted me to handle negotiations. One partner, Mr. Wilson, offered me a project I never dreamed would land on my desk, a contract negotiation for a high-profile startup. It felt like climbing Everest, but I said yes. The night before the big meeting, I barely slept. All those insecurities came rushing back. What if I failed? What if I proved him right? But the next morning, as I buttoned up my best blazer and tied my hair into a neat bun, I looked in the mirror and reminded myself, watch me. When I walked into that conference room, something changed. I was calm, clear, in control. I presented the contract, negotiated terms, even defended a clause that would have saved the client thousands. The startup team signed with gratitude, and I walked out of that building feeling 10 feet tall. That night, my husband tried one more time to cut me down. He slammed his fist against the counter, voice cracking with rage. "You're still nothing without me," he shouted. I didn't even flinch. "You don't get to define me anymore," I told him, quiet and steady. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. He realized I wasn't afraid of him anymore, and that terrified him more than anything. The next day, I finalized the application for my legal consultant license. I paid the fees from my own bank account, every dollar hard-earned and protected. It felt like buying my freedom, one signature at a time. As my responsibilities grew, I could sense other people starting to root for me. My coworkers would stop by my desk, asking for advice. Clients called back with referrals. I wasn't invisible anymore, I was respected. And in those small, powerful moments, I could almost laugh at how deeply he had underestimated me. Still, at night, the anxiety tried to claw its way back. I wondered if I was strong enough to finish what I'd started. But each time, I remembered that girl in the bathroom on graduation night, the girl who looked in the mirror and whispered, "Watch me." I couldn't let her down. If you've ever stood in front of someone who tried to erase you, I hope you hear me now. You don't have to live their story. You can write your own. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe if you believe women deserve the right to define themselves, because the next chapter of my story would change everything. My husband had no idea how far I was willing to go. But he was about to find out. Filing for divorce was not the act of a woman who had given up, it was the act of a woman who had finally remembered who she was. The paperwork felt like a shield in my hands, proof that I was choosing myself over his twisted idea of love. Every page I signed felt like a chain breaking. Still, I was terrified. For so long, I'd been conditioned to see him as my protector, my provider, my only shot at survival. But I'd already survived worse: his coldness, his words, his betrayal of everything I was. So I pushed forward. When I handed him the divorce papers, his smirk was almost theatrical. "You won't actually go through with this," he scoffed, tossing the envelope on the table as if it disgusted him. But I had already gone through with it in my heart. That night, I moved into a cheap studio apartment, carrying only a suitcase and my laptop. I remember sitting on the bare mattress, no sheets, no curtains on the windows, and feeling a strange, thrilling sense of peace. The room was empty, but it was mine. No one could take it from me. My lawyer called the next day to talk strategy. The case would be difficult, he had resources, and he liked to play dirty. But I was ready. I had kept records, screenshots, bank statements, even copies of hateful messages. For once, I wasn't scared to speak up. The first hearing was brutal. Sitting in front of the judge, I told my story: how he had controlled me, mocked me, diminished me, all while pretending to be a loving husband. He tried to interrupt, to twist my words, but the judge silenced him with a glare that gave me hope. I had never felt so exposed, but also never so free. Every truth I spoke lifted a stone off my shoulders. There was nowhere to hide anymore, and I didn't want to. After the hearing, he cornered me in the hallway. His voice was low, poisonous. "You're throwing everything away." I held my ground. "I'm keeping everything that matters," I told him. And I meant it. Weeks passed, filled with document signings, court dates, awkward calls with friends who didn't know whose side to take. I showed up to every appointment, determined to prove I was capable. I still worked my long hours, even volunteering for extra projects, because I refused to let him define me as a failed wife. I was building something that would outlive his insults. During one hearing, the judge asked me if I wanted to keep the shared house. I surprised everyone, including myself, by declining it. That house was his kingdom, the place where he'd ruled over me. I didn't want the bricks that held all that pain. I wanted my own space, a new chapter. Instead, I asked for a financial settlement and a share of his investment portfolio. It wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity, about making sure I would never again rely on him for a single cent. The day the court signed off on the settlement was the day I felt reborn. I walked out of that building taller, lighter, unstoppable. He tried one last time to break me, sending text after text, calling me names, even showing up at my work to intimidate me. But the woman he found there wasn't the same woman from graduation night. I looked him in the eyes and said, "You don't scare me anymore." And he left. That night, I went back to my tiny apartment, ordered takeout, and ate on the floor while staring at my future. No more pretending. No more shrinking. Just me, finally free. If you've ever felt like there's no escape, I want you to hear this: there is. It may be messy. It may be terrifying. But there is always a way forward if you are willing to fight for it. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe if you believe no woman should be forced to stay where she is unloved, because no matter how impossible it feels, freedom is worth every risk. The next chapter of my life would be about rebuilding, on my own terms, for the first time ever. Starting over felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into a vast unknown. My small apartment was quiet, almost empty, but it was mine. I had packed my life into a single suitcase, but inside, my heart felt full for the first time in years. I was no longer running from someone, I was running towards myself. The days after the divorce were strange. There was freedom, yes, but also a deep, surprising loneliness. I had spent so many years being told what to think, what to feel, what to say, that silence itself felt almost threatening. But I learned to sit with that silence. I let it wash over me until it became comforting instead of suffocating. I learned to cook simple meals, pay bills, and make decisions without checking with anyone else. Each small victory, like buying groceries or calling the landlord to fix a leak, was a reminder that I was capable, that I could stand on my own feet without needing permission. These daily acts, so ordinary, felt like hard-won freedom. I also learned to listen to my own voice again. For so long, it had been drowned out by his insults and commands, leaving me unsure of what I truly wanted or believed. But now it was loud, clear, and strong, growing bolder every single day. I started journaling every morning, pouring out fears, hopes, and dreams onto the page. Writing became my therapy, a way to rebuild my inner world piece by piece. Slowly, I rebuilt my life. The consulting business I started was born directly from my own experience. I wanted to help women who felt trapped and powerless, just like I had been. I knew what it felt like to have nowhere to turn, and I promised myself that I would be the voice of reason and hope for others. Sharing my story gave me purpose, a sense of mission, and a way to connect with people who had lost faith in themselves. One afternoon, I received an email from a woman who had watched my videos and felt inspired to leave her own toxic marriage. Her words made me realize how far I had come, how my pain had transformed into power. That message stayed with me, taped to my bathroom mirror, a daily reminder that my scars had meaning. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. I was stepping into a version of myself I had only ever dreamed about, fearless, determined, unwilling to be silenced. Of course, healing isn't a straight line. Some days are harder than others. Memories sneak in like ghosts, and doubts try to wrap their cold fingers around my throat. There are still nights when I wake up wondering if I made the right choices, still moments when I question whether I am enough. But each time, I remind myself of where I started, of the battles I have fought and won, of the strength I had to gather when no one else believed in me. My husband's voice no longer haunts me. Instead, I hear my own, strong, confident, unbreakable, reminding me that I survived, that I rebuilt, and that I will never let anyone erase me again. If you've been told you can't survive, you are wrong. You are so much stronger than you know. And if you need proof, I am standing here, living proof that it is possible to rise, to heal, and to thrive. I hope my story gives you hope, courage, and a gentle but powerful reminder: no one owns your life but you. No one has the right to write your ending except you. If this story touched you, please like, comment, and subscribe to support others finding their strength too. Together, we rise, together we heal, and together we build a future where no one is silenced or broken. Because the woman I am today is the woman who refused to be silenced, who fought back with grace and fire, and who will never, ever let anyone steal her voice again. And if you take anything from my story, let it be this: your voice matters. Your story matters. And you are allowed to take up space in this world.